Hello and welcome back to the Nine Sports Podcast. My name is Kathleen and I host the weekly soccer edition of our show. On today's show, we're going to talk about the U.S. women's national team who defeated Argentina in the first match of the 2026 SheBelieves Cup. Then we'll look ahead to Wednesday's match against Canada and check in with the North Carolina Courage and their new coach, Mak Lind, who was introduced this week. We'll start this episode the same way Emma Hayes started her press conference today with a little team news. And although I'm going to reverse the two headlines, Trinity Rodman is okay. She returned to practice today. She was cleared to participate. So that is great news for the U.S. after she hit the deck there late in the second half and appeared to grab her back, which we know has caused kind of recurring issues for Trinity. The not so good news, though, Lily Real has exited camp and returned to Gotham. She sustained a foot injury shortly after subbing in that second half against Argentina, and again has now left camp. It is also too late for them to bring up a sub, so we will see how Emma Hayes decides to use the remaining players that she's brought into this camp. Obviously, a lot of depth here. More experience in the last couple of rosters, so that should be a relatively easy swap for right now. But Lily Real, a player that really seems to be on such an upward arc right now after that Rookie of the Year campaign in the NWSL, has clearly become a player that Emma Hayes really likes and trusts on this team. So best wishes to her. We hope to get her back soon and obviously see her for NWSL play as well. Managing editor at the Nine Soccer, Julie Schreiber, wrote about that game and what we learned about the team, especially from a toughness standpoint. Emma Hayes talked about that a lot after the game, especially answering a couple of questions about how maybe it was too tough at times. Jaden Shaw took a very hard foul in the first half. And then there were just some continued, I think she calls it scrappiness throughout that game. But she seemed to definitely see that as a positive challenge for this team where they are right now, pushing them to be a little tougher, but then also mentally be tougher and to not retaliate and not let that get to them as the game goes on, especially in a tournament environment. So let's hear what Emma had to say about that.
I think actually it's important for us to know we choose. If we're getting involved in situations, we choose to come away from them things. And I think both Jaden and Olivia handled those things well. Provocation's going to happen. Provocation's going to happen with different types of opponent. How you handle that, for me, is a testament. Why? Because imagine that is a World Cup, and we, in a split second, we lose it, boom, down to 10 players. So we want these opportunities. And if we were seeking perfection, then I might be approaching something differently. But I'm here to develop a whole squad to be ready for these situations. And so I'm delighted that I'm putting in the team in an uncomfortable position and that we're coming through it much differently than we did with Portugal's exactly the same situation for me. And actually, I think we handled the hard part better and had much better emotional control, even though it was scrappy.
I love her using the phrase scrappy there, and I do think that is a good way to describe it. Julie had also thrown out the word chippy, which I know is one of our favorite words in sports that apparently doesn't mean anything to people outside of sports, because I've had that conversation a lot of times. But I think that the team played well. They looked pretty solid this match. Again, an interesting mix of players, a relatively young list to start that first half. But I mean, when you look at the weapons she's able to bring in off the bench, it's just frankly terrifying. And the potential of this team. And we get that first goal from Lindsay Heaps. Really beautiful shot from the top of the box in the first half. And then Jaden Shaw had a great chance at the end of the half, ended up scoring hers in the second on an assist from Heaps to put Argentina away. It's another shutout for the US, which is another great sign. And one absolutely wild stat I loved from this one is that Heaps has now scored at least one goal in 12 consecutive years for the national team. That just speaks to how incredibly solid and reliable she has been, also how she's been here a while, and is such a good fit at captain, I think, for this team. Um, Emily Sonnet, the internet, me included, I guess, loves to joke about how she is kind of the queen of the SheBelieves Cup, or the Sonnet Believes Cup. But two really important, I think, veteran presence is there. And then you have players like Rose, who are able to not only welcome the team here to Ohio this week, but really help them, I think, through those moments where they're facing a little bit more physical competition than maybe they're used to um, with some of their other opponents throughout the year. I would assume that Canada is going to be a little feisty. There's a lot of history between these two teams, a lot of familiar faces with several players competing in the NWSL, like Kaylin Sheridan of the North Carolina Courage, Washington's Gabby Carl, Chicago's Julia Grosso. And on a quick turnaround, both teams, Canada defeated Colombia 4-1 in their game on Sunday. And then the US obviously winning that one 2-0. These two teams, US and Canada, have met 67 times, and the US holds a commanding lead in that one, although it feels like it's been closer. 54 wins, 4 losses, and 9 draws. US won the last meeting 3-0 in July of 2025. And also won the last time they faced off at the SheBelieves Cup, which did go into extra time. In her press conference today, after those quick health updates, she did jump in and talk about Canada and what she has seen differently from them here as opposed to that last window in the summer when these two teams met previously. So let's see what she had to say there.
I think what is clear is that I think Canada are in a different place. We all know that this is a historical rivalry between two teams, so it's always going to be a competitive fixture. My focus is on ensuring that our emotional control is in the place where it doesn't matter if you play Argentina, you play Canada, whomever. We're showing development and maturity in those things. That's something that I think is important in this type of game. I think Canada and I've obviously coached against Casey for many years, so the way she sets up her team is really clear, and I think they are. I think in general their build-up play with Kaylin at the base of their play, they have a variety in their play, whether they're in. They've got high fullbacks, got good double pivots that will want to get on the ball. I think in general against Colombia, I thought their build up into the final phase was a step above what it was back in the October fixture. I think they're extremely threatening from set pieces. I think not just the aerial threat, but the delivery is exceptional. It's on the money every time. So we have to be really switched on, because I think she doesn't miss many in terms of hitting the key areas. I think while they might obviously be missing Olivia Smith, I think changes to their team, I'm seeing more aggression from them out of possession. I think tougher to beat, and the way they defend their box, the bodies they get in their central area when you've gone wide, they get blocks off. This Casey's a centre back, so she's developing her team to be like that. And as I said, I think this will be a much tougher test. Even though, listen, I thought it was I think they'll be hurting Canada from that game. So, you have to expect a reaction from them. But I also think that they've made progress as a team. So I'm anticipating a different type of match. So I know that the team are very, very, very much prepared for that.
I think it's really interesting. I don't particularly remember Emma talking this much about the emotional maturity of this team. I know we've talked a lot about playing time and getting players those reps, and I feel like that's been more from a technical standpoint, necessarily than kind of the emotional side. But it's interesting to see her kind of flipping that language and see if that's where she's kind of focusing on as she starts honing in on this World Cup roster, trying to figure out, who those leaders are going to be, navigating a couple of injuries. Obviously, we've talked a lot about a couple of pregnant players coming back, or new mothers, I guess, at this point. But trying to find those players who not only can bring that really high level technical ability to the pitch, but also step up into that leadership role, be a little bit more vocal. She's talked about Claire Hutton as one of those players who's kind of stepped up in that way. Jamise Joseph really advocating for herself in that last camp. And so I'm really interested to see how this continues to progress. That match will be played 6:45 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday, and we will have our Thomas Costello on hand to recap all the action. Really excited to get his perspective. I know he's excited to write a little soccer for you guys. And then after that match, the U.S. has one more in the SheBelieves Cup, and that will be played Saturday in Harrison, New Jersey against Colombia. And we will also be there. Lots of representation from the Nine Soccer in this window. And I am just so proud to be able to spend a couple of us around the country. I will be at Big 12 basketball, but keeping a very close eye on these matches as well. And before we get into North Carolina's new coach, I did want to mention Annie Peterson's latest piece. Annie is our soccer insider over at the Nine Sports. And this week she wrote her column about Sam Coffey, who is just absolutely thriving over with Man City. What a fun team to watch this year in the Women's Super League. The two discussed Coffey's decision to leave the NWSL, how she stepped into a more vocal leadership role with the U.S. national team as well, and then got some perspective from her coaches about just what makes Sam Coffey such a huge asset for both club and country. And then, as I mentioned last week with the new site merger, you can now find all of our stories in one place, which is hopefully super convenient for you guys. Annie, of course, used to write our Soccer Monday column. We've rebranded that slightly. She's now a Soccer Insider, gives her a little bit more freedom to publish any day of the week alongside our other Soccer Insiders, and also the ability for us to sneak in a couple of other sports there, going outside of our typical 6-day-a-week publishing structure. Everything from Annie as our Soccer Insider, everything from the Nine Soccer, and everything else we're covering, which is going to include a lot of basketball over the next couple of weeks. You can find all of that at the9sports.com, THEIXSPORTS.com. And then over in North Carolina, Mak Lind was introduced this week as head coach of the Courage. He most recently coached women's soccer over in Sweden. His club won a league title with a 21-1-4 record and a 68 goal differential, plus 68, which is a huge number, obviously, and has the potential, to really change kind of the offensive look of not only North Carolina, but this league. We usually don't see goal differentials that high in this league, so it'll be fascinating to see what he does with this offense. He also joked in the press conference about how his wife is really looking forward to moving and getting out of the Swedish weather. So hopefully North Carolina can hold their end of the bargain on that. The Courage finished 9th in the league last year with a 9-8-9 record and a -2 goal differential. So veteran Ryan Williams spoke with the media about how that's going to be a big focus for them. And then I also tacked on a longer quote from Coach Lind about how he's going to take a slightly different approach to scoring and kind of building that offense this year.
I think he's definitely super eager to score goals. He wants us to go forward, take risks, and really be okay with maybe not succeeding every time going forward, but continuing to believe in each other and believe in ourselves, moving the ball forward. And ultimately, this game is we want to score goals, we want to win games. And I think that I think we're going to do that this year. Yeah.
It's interesting when you come to a new environment, a new team. Normally you talk about the attacking part. You start with the ball, with the goalkeeper, and say, we're going to try to score a goal. We did the opposite. We start with the ball inside of the goal and then reverse it, meaning that we practice on our what we call finishing phase. How do we want to score goals? We want to create those behaviors when we get into different spaces. So when we are in that space, this is how we attack the box, and this is how we want to score goals in the last third. So we have been practicing a lot of that in our training. I think the first 2-3 weeks has been that we only been in the last third of the opponent's half and create those behaviors with timing, chemistry, and then reverse it. Last week has been the first time we talk about our build-up closer to goalkeeper. So there's a way of reversing it. If you ask our players how we score goals, hopefully they can answer in different ways we can score goals. They can see the goal happened in an early build-up because we have reversed the pattern or the style of play many times.
It's always hard to tell exactly what to think in a new coach press conference, but it sounds like he's definitely coming in with a plan. Definitely, has jumped right in to preseason with the courage, and hopefully we see some really exciting results. That team has so many dynamic stars that I think he has a lot of room to improve. Certainly that record and that goal differential, but excited to see what they're able to do. We have a lot of new coaches in the league this year, in addition to 2 new teams. So dynamics could totally change. That is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you don't miss our hockey and basketball episodes later this week. Also, if you haven't already, check out Women's Sports Daily for your 5-minute morning roundup of the latest headlines in women's sports. That is on a different feed, but you should be able to find it wherever you listen to your podcasts, Women's Sports Daily. Thank you again, and I will see you soon.